Hello and welcome everyone to the Fringe Legal Virtual Summit. I am really excited to present to you Mark Collins, who is the senior legal technologist at Evershed Sutherland. Many of you have registered for this talk on this very sort of poignant topic of turning expense into profit with regards to the use of technology. So Mark will give us a brief introduction to what this topic entails. He will share plenty of insights, and then we'll jump into a Q&A after that. As he is talking, for those that are watching live, just a reminder, there is a comment box down below, so please do add your suggestions, comments, questions, and so on, and so we can have an active discussion around this either during or after the summit. And please do feel free to share about this talk itself with the hashtag the Fringe Legal Summit. Thank you so much. Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. It's lovely to talk about something close to my heart. I've been, I suppose, involved in legal technology for over 20 years. I was a commercial litigator many years ago in the 1990s and became a professional support lawyer, and then a head of knowledge management, and then a legal project manager, and most recently legal technologist. But I suppose the thread that's run through everything that I've done has been trying to make technology both useful and profitable. And it's always been a concern through our current situation and previous downturns and challenges that we always go through, is that the expense of technology needs to be justified. The return on that investment needs to be justified. And I've had some experience of it, some success, some challenges, not always successful, but I can try and share some of my experiences with you today. I think the key ingredients are that, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about, whether it's in relation to spending money on technology or otherwise, is quite fundamental to the legal service delivery these days. So data capture, law firms aren't necessarily historically good at capturing good data, consistent data. What we do with that data, analyzing it and using it to improve our productivity and profitability, and perhaps using it as the ground for the investment in technology and the improvement that we're looking for in process, or the improvement that we're looking for in profitability, can be delivered through technology. So I think the first one is legal project management, the data capture side of things. The second one has been defined, if you like, or can be categorized as legal process improvement. And the third is the legal technology element. And I'd just like to walk through some of those as ideas and as theories, and talk you through in a little bit more detail. Legal project management, much like any project management, whether you're building a power station, or you're running a piece of litigation, or you're running a transaction in a law firm, or you're building an extension on the back of your house, is really important to plan it, to scope it, because the people, the materials, the time involved will have an impact on the timing of delivery, and also the cost. And in our current world, and for many years now, clients are looking for price certainty, or at least price transparency. Often it's a fixed price or a capped price, and therefore the management of that pricing and the management of the execution, the monitoring of the delivery, are really, really important. Whether it's a building or an extension, a power station, or some other project, the same principles apply to legal project management: scoping, budgeting, delivering and monitoring that according to the scope and to the plan that you've set out, and reviewing it once you have delivered. I think the fundamentals, this is a very basic spreadsheet that I'm showing you now, is to actually try and capture the granular phase and task details in data that you actually want to provide to the client, and to provide to the management of the law firm if you're working in a law firm, or to the management of an in-house function if you're managing the delivery of legal service to a business. It's the same principle. Break it down into its constituent parts. So I've got a real estate project here with pre-contract due diligence, document drafting, reporting, exchange, completion, so on. It could be a piece of litigation, from claim, defense, to evidence, to trial. It could be a finance transaction with due diligence and negotiation and drafting and completion. And post-completion filing. The principles are the same. You break it down into sufficient detail. You see who's going to do the work. You're going to estimate how long it's going to take for them to do that. And each of those people, or either each of those resources, will have an hourly rate. They might charge that rate, but they may not charge the rate. They'll have a cost rate as well associated with them, which is the basis of their overhead or their salary. And you can see if you calculate the number of hours and you look at the number of hours times rate, you get a cost. And in the next columns, you can see the actual hours and the actual costs. So over time, you can use this type of structure to provide an estimate and a plan to start with for the client, but you can also use it to report to the client on progress going forward. And you can do that on technology. So there are lots of different ways of showing project management overruns or underruns, or how you're looking against actuals against estimates. This is an example of that, but you can see that this is a piece of litigation down the left-hand side, and it's got recorded value, budgeted value, and the percentages are horribly overrun. This sort of technology is really useful. You can capture and cut and slice and dice the data in so many ways, from your time recording and from your project manager, from your practice management system. And you can see where the profitable matters are. You can see where within each matter, within your phase and task, where some of the wastage is, where some of the over-resourcing or under-resourcing is happening. And you can see where the really good practice is, and you can try and replicate that. So the data that you capture with this sort of granular level is so important. You can also use it to price the next piece of work. So you can look back over the history and say, I've got so many matters which are very similar. They've got the same activities involved. They've got the same type of resource. Why is that one more expensive? Why is that one more profitable than the other? But you can use that data to plan your next offering, if you like, your next piece of work. This is really, really useful to understand where, as an organization, you can become more efficient and become more profitable. This takes us from legal project management into legal process improvement. So you've now identified possibly some of the areas, some of the work types, some of the particular pieces of work that you've got, which are fruitful ground for improvement and fruitful ground for change to be more profitable. Using methodologies like Lean and Six Sigma, you can work out within those types of work where the change needs to come, where the processes take too long, where there's wastage, where there's over-resourcing, where the partner is doing due diligence and it's really not useful, it's not good time, it's not good use of their time. You can see where people are not getting the task right first time, and things are being changed and having to be checked and changed where they really don't need to be, or they ought not to be. And this takes, often has taken the form of process mapping, where you will sit a group of people down in a room and you'll talk through the process of that particular type of work, and you'll map it out, whether that's using stickies on a wall or a piece of paper. You can equally just say who is doing what happens next, and why are they doing it. You map out the current process, and then you come to it and challenge it and say, okay, I'm trying to remove that duplication. I'm trying to remove that mistake that's regularly being made. How would we change this? And this is the opportunity where, based on your data originally from your legal project management and your process improvement, where you have an opportunity to use technology. Technology can be one of your tools in the toolbox to change the way that we deliver legal service. Rather than coming at this with, I think you should buy this piece of lovely technology because everybody else has got one of these, you've actually got a rational, evidence-based business case in many respects to say, this is the profitability that needs to be improved. This is where we think it can be improved. And this is a piece of technology that could do it. And so we've got, lots of different things. 3 examples that I can give you are document automation. It's been around for a long time, but it can improve the way that lawyers draft a piece of legal drafting, usually an agreement or of sorts. It can speed things up. So if it speeds it up, it means that the number of chargeable hours are less, and it means that the profitability might improve. It might be a fixed price piece of work, but you can deliver it in fewer hours, so you can retain more of the profit required. Lease abstraction in a real estate context, but could be due diligence in a corporate or a finance context. Taking data out of documents and producing a report is often done over time by a human being. Historically, it's been done by juniors looking at pieces of paper. This sort of work, with the advent of machine learning and artificial intelligence, is getting better. It's not perfect, but the way that the machine and the human can interact can save time, can save money, and it means that you can deliver a quality product quicker and more cheaply. The last one is matter management, which is more of if you like, a description that could mean different things to different people, but it's digitizing the delivery of legal services. It's taking paper, if you like, out of the process, which is historically for a lawyer been there. It's taking the instruction from the client through an online portal. It's taking us into much more of a consumer type interaction where the legal service delivery can be delivered almost entirely online, and can be approved, can be negotiated, can be executed and completed without the recourse to lots of pieces of paper that need to find their way around different people to sign. I think all of those things could be incorporated into a process improvement strategy. These things can be justified. They all have a cost. This is a return on investment calculation for a document automation. You can see that you can look at the number of hours it takes to generate a document manually. You can look at the rate and the time it takes for each of those lawyers to create that. You can see how much time it might save if you were to do that in an automated way, which you would need to test and prove. And over time, you can prove the savings, the annual savings per document. How many of those documents do you do each year? And you're building a business case where the cost of this, the expense of a piece of kit, has a return on that investment, and you can see the return and the profitability return as well. I can go into more detail if you want in terms of some of those technologies, but I think fundamentally the data capture, the reporting and analysis, the analysis into digitization from LPM to LPI into legal technology is what I would say is the core fundamentals, the foundation stones of turning expense into profit. Ab, I'm going to turn back to you now.
Thank you, Mark. That was really useful. So quite a lot to unpack there. let me see where we can start.
It's a whistle-stop tour.
Very much so, very much so. So a couple of takeaways, just sort of the high level bullet points were, hey, you made that sound really simple, and which is probably more credit to your expertise about this, how you can sort of simplify these things. But ultimately, maybe the first place to start would be like all of the things that you talk about. They seem frankly logical, right? There's no reason that people shouldn't be measuring these things, and once you know what your budget is, what your cost is, you start thinking about profitability. I wrote down one of the early opening words from you: technology needs to be useful and profitable. And that is a difficult dichotomy to maintain. And certainly the expense of it needs to be justified. And I mean, I would say probably now, in today's day and age, it has to be, it's a required expense almost, right? It's just the cost of doing business to utilize technology. So how do you make the most of it? And I suppose to phrase it, to put a question to you, why do you think, whether someone has put it so elegantly and in such a simplistic way as you did, why do you think people don't do this as much? Because it is something that should be done, and I'm sure in a lot of firms and in-house functions it is done. Why isn't it done more frequently? What do you think?
Well, one of the major ingredients that I've missed out entirely was people. Right. and culture, and fundamentally, I'm asking people to change the way that they're working. You're asking people to record phase and task codes in their time recording, where they already feel like they're under pressure to get things done quickly because it's a fixed price contract, and if I spend too much time doing X or Y, then I can't possibly do that. So they will take the easiest option. Similarly, to change the culture in a law firm needs leadership from the partners and the management of the law firm. And so the business case that I, very superficially, in many ways, rudimentarily is laid out needs to be compelling and needs to be evidence-based, so that the management can see that there's something real there. But I'll go back to my first point. It's people, and you have to take people with you. You can have the best business case you like, you can have the best technology, and if the people don't like it or they don't want to do it, they don't have a sufficient incentive to use it, then I think you're stuck.
And completely agree with you. How have you seen it done successfully in the past, where you've been, whether it's you or others that you worked with, have been able to take people with you, and it could be in your current role or otherwise, and I know you've had success with this in the past. So how have you done that? And actually, the second question, and I'll prompt you again as we continue our discussion, is what are the results like, right? This is good, and this is maybe good as a theoretical piece. I think it would be more impactful if we can understand what is possible if you actually apply this in real life.
Okay, so I'll tell you the story. When I was working at a previous firm, I won't tell you which one it was, but it was an international firm. I was working in for the Paris office with a very capable partner in the finance department. He came to me. I was very lucky. I did just started in the role. I really needed to make an impact and get some traction with the change that I was trying to do. I was in an LPM role. The partner came to me and he said, can you help me, Mark? I've just got a bill that I'm going to put into my client, and the bill is for 300,000 euros. And we quoted 200,000. So there's 100,000 overrun. And I know that the client is not going to like this at all. What can you do to help me? I said, well, what have you been recording? What did the estimate say? Did you base your estimate, your price on any assumptions, or did you capture any sort of phase and task code? No, we didn't capture any of that at all. So I said, okay, can we look back over the time records? Can you give me access to all of the time records and the document management and emails and everything to work out what the original price was for and what it eventually did happen? And can we justify this extra 100,000? So we put together a picture of why the matter had grown enormously. Why the scope, why the interaction with 3 different directors was more difficult than it ought to have been. The reality on the ground, which was not expected when the original price was given, and eventually the client paid the extra 100,000, and the client was clear. It was clear to the client that it was justified because this had grown.
Right.
I think we were very, very lucky. But what happened next was much more compelling, because the partner said, gosh, that we were lucky. What we really need to do for the next one and the one after that is to actually plan ahead and to work out that we need to capture this phase and task in the estimate and the quote that we do. And then we need to monitor this as it's going along. We need to have a time recording code called out of scope, because so much was out of scope. We didn't, so it was a learning exercise for the partner, but it was clear. I mean, and this is what I mean about people. They have to appreciate that it's worth doing it, and you have to have leadership in those partner roles where they appreciate that it's good to do it. He was revolutionary because this was amazing. My first week, I got the chance to change his perception, and he then took it on to change everybody else's perception and to change the way of working. So I think those were 2 lovely ingredients: leadership and evidence.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, when you see results like that, absolutely, there is some element of luck, like most things in these items, but certainly, and you even talked about it in your presentation, the importance of capturing data. Yes, it will help you probably in the short term a little, and with some luck a lot. But the real value, at least it seems, is having that data available as you make decisions for the future, right? So in this case, as you were talking about it, having that information available so you can actually scope projects better to clients in the first place. You get a better understanding of, look, what kind of scope creep do we get in certain types of matters, right? Whether it's real estate finance, litigation, look, in these types of matters, we are normally accurate to our projections 80% of the time. The other 20%, we blow it out of the water, and it becomes so complex, and you can expect a bill of an extra 500,000-600,000 times, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think focusing on things like that from the data, looking historically at where write-offs or write-downs happened,
Mm.
and measuring that as a target. You say, what does success look like? Well, you can say over a year we would like to reduce our write-offs by X percent. And when you actually feel that you're doing things every time, you're improving the process of doing a scoping and a managing that scope, legal project management, you are reducing the write-offs. And I think from my experience, that does tell in the evidence after a year. That's the success. That's the measure, if you like. That's the success factor.
Yeah, and I mean, as I speak to firms and I speak to firm leadership, a lot of the time, like, there's little dispute about everyone wants to increase the ROI, the return on investment, right? Everyone is happy that using technology or some process or tools will help them become more efficient, more effective. What I tend to hear less about is how they're measuring it today. What are you doing today to
Yeah,
understand what your baseline is? And it
absolutely.
goes back to the silly saying that they use with kids sometimes. You want to be rich? Here's a penny or a cent or whatever, and now you're
Yeah.
richer, right? How do you define what that means? So how does one start thinking about that? And you talked about lean, you talked about Six Sigma, and it's all about increasing value. And certainly I'm a big fan of Six Sigma about reducing variability. How do people think about bringing the entire firm management, whether it's in a practice or at a whole firm level, so they start capturing this baseline? Because again, these things exist, have for a long time. None of these things, sadly, are revolutionary. I wish
No.
they were. But how do we make sure that people actually do these things?
I think having the baseline data.
Mm.
So the first thing that I did in joining Evershed Sutherland was to look at the current data that we had,
Yeah.
and to work out where the obvious write-offs were happening, where the levels were very different, where within real estate similar types of transaction were done in one location rather than in another location, and for some reason the profitability was better in one than the other. It gives you if you like, a target to aim at. You can't boil the ocean all in one go, so you can focus on particular things. You can focus on where some real difference can be made, and I think that baseline data is really important. And that, if you like, educates you or instructs you where to go to, and where to do your first workshop, where to do your first process mapping session in those particular types of matter. And you've got your data to start with. You've got your as-is process, possibly after a few sessions, and you've got the ability to then apply some of the lean or the Six Sigma methodology to challenge that process with the notion that technology might be one of your tools in your toolkit to change the process. But it's not a given that technology will be the answer. It could just be, you need a better process. You need a completely different resource set. It's not necessarily technology being the answer.
Right. And I guess possibly a difficult question. We'll
Go
see.
for it.
So take yourself out of your expert mindset, right, to someone to whom this is all relatively new because they're new at the firm, within legal, or into just all of these things. How does one, where do you actually start? What is a good starting point? Because I'm asking that question partly for my own selfish benefit, because all of these topics that we talked about are a wormhole that you can
Yeah.
get sucked into, and you spend too much time again educating yourself. And I want to, certainly me personally, I want to be more practical and tactical about this. Where does someone who is not an expert, who doesn't know all of these things, right? What is the first step? What are the first principal ways of thinking about this and approaching it? So you have the people support behind you. Someone supports you to say, you know what, we're on board that we should look into these things. Go forth and let's get started. Where do you begin?
The way I began,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say, is if you've got data in the practice management system or some sort of time recording system, then use it, try and access it, try and read it, try and get some order out of it to analyze those themes that are coming out. If you need a tool that goes over the top of that to visualize some of that data, because often a practice management system is not brilliant, often the data that lawyers have put into it not brilliant. It needs to be improved. Sometimes there are a number of tools that can look at the narratives, the text narratives that people have put into the time recording, and can auto categorize those activities and therefore create a picture of the type of work that you're doing. But that to me is the beginning. I wouldn't dive in with a piece of technology as the solution and think this is the answer to all the problems. I'd try and work out what the problems were to start with. They may be in different places, they may be in different locations, they may be in different work types. And I think that's the start.
Are there particular practices where you think there's at least there's an abundance, so let's assume you're a full service firm, there's more of an abundance of data versus it may be a little bit dicier? Or do you think it applies equally to all most functions?
It's really interesting from my experience that, litigators in the UK in high court and county court litigation are required to estimate with particular codes in phase and task. So you could say that litigation would be a fruitful and a fertile place to start. They don't necessarily do it consistently, but that might be a good way. Again, it goes back to the leadership question. The places where I've seen it work, where the data is there, is because the head of the department has said, you must record your time in this way. I don't have to explain it to you. You just have to record your time in this way. And as a result, the reporting to the client or the reporting to the executive of that particular team was amazing. It all relied on the quality of the data coming in, which all relied very much on the leadership and the vision of the person involved leading that department.
Okay, so all the leaders listening, just set a de facto rule that people should record this information, and
I make it as easy as possible to do. Yeah, don't give people an unreasonable task and dictate that they must do something unreasonable. Try and work out what would be most useful for them inputting, and what would be most useful for you as a manager outputting. What do you want to measure? There's no point in recording something or asking people to put it into a system if you're not going to use it coming out. So it would be good to know what you want from it, what do you want to see. And that needs some sort of analysis of resource cost and pricing, and the comparison between what you actually charge going out and what it costs you to deliver.
Yeah, and I think there's a quote attributed to Steve Jobs. I think it's Steve Jobs, which is something along the lines of that convenience will trump function every single time, right? And it certainly is true in this context. And I imagine as this ends up becoming a truly collaborative effort, right? So you're working with various teams. It's not just sort of one person who's doing this. What if they don't have a specific legal technologist available to do this work, right? What are the teams and individuals that it's beneficial to sort of draw into? And certainly I can think of some ideas and use cases for once you have the information from BD and marketing point of view, who typically should be involved in this.
I think the accounting, the finance side of things is absolutely key. It's not what comes necessarily naturally to lawyers to look at spreadsheets, and therefore having somebody who can manipulate data for you, they can say, we've done 3,000 matters in the last X number of weeks or whatever, and these are the different types of matter, and can help you through that data to extract it from an accounting or a practice management system to give you that start, I think is really important. I'm an English literature graduate. I'm not a mathematician. I did a law degree after an English literature. So a spreadsheet to me is also, not my natural milieu, but it's something you just have to find your way through, and help from finance at some level is really, really key. Yeah.
Right, but where you shine is being able to tell a good story from the data. Equally as important, right? So, okay, wonderful. And we're running short on time, so just a couple of quick questions to wrap up. I guess from you talked about some of the tools, and one of the things I certainly underlined is technology is one of the tools in doing this work, and you've talked about it a little bit, taking the paper out of the legal process. Difficult task to do indeed. What are other best practices that you found to be effective that people should be mindful of? Basically, what are the easy little gaps that people may sort of fall down on, and which we can just give them a bit more guidance on? Just watch out for this in the future as you go through this process.
Ooh, gosh.
Well, let me put it a different way. What's your checklist as you go through this yourself, right? What are the key milestones that you measure for yourselves as you are going through this process?
I've been, I suppose, a convert to sort of agile methodology where you actually get something up and running relatively quickly, but you don't come at it from a solution. It's not my idea that is imposed on somebody. It's very much listening to what people say. So you've got your evidence to start with, your data, you've got some problem that you need to solve. It's not that I need to go and buy the latest shiny thing that everybody else has got, or that it has to be AI or it has to be something. You actually have a problem that you need to solve. I'd like to think that we are, and I think in the current climate, it's even more important that we focus on what our clients actually want, and listening to what our clients want. And a lot of the time, law firms are delivering what they've always delivered in a way that they've always delivered. And especially in real estate, it's very document heavy. The land registry for hundreds of years has required a wet signature on a piece of paper or vellum. So I think it's really, really important that we get beyond that somehow, but listen to what clients actually want. Yeah. And if the client says they are willing to work with you to organize and to redesign a process, brilliant. Help that. Get the client drive, because if you've got the client on your side, the partner will follow immediately.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I mean, we've heard this being echoed throughout the conference and through others, but getting clients on board. And if you can find that client who is as eager or maybe even more eager than you, that wants to do this, that will certainly make a big difference, because that gives a very important impetus and a need behind all of this. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That was really helpful. I wrote down in summary at least 3 words for me in the way that you outlined the process. Of course, it's a cyclical thing, which is sort of scoping, budgeting, and review. You certainly simplified it very much. And if people do want to get in touch, your details are included here. So I'm sure they would.
Please do. Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to share and learn myself. I don't want to make it sound like it's easy at all. It's not easy.
No, it's easy to say. It's easy
to say and difficult to do. Absolutely.
For sure. But thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And yeah, thank you for sharing with us.
Pleasure. Thank you.